Hi, welcome to HeadTalks, the podcast from Head Forwards. I'm your host, Owen Hodge, and I'm joined today by Head of Agile Delivery at Cornwall Council, Mike Cairns.
Hey Owen, it's nice to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Thanks very much, Mike. So, did you come far today to get to us?
I live in Aggie, so I live in St Agnes.
Yeah.
So it took ages. Roads up.
Yeah,
and it's
absolutely.
all a bit of a nightmare, but no, I mean, I live in West Cornwall, so
Yeah.
I'm come down here quite a lot. So yeah,
For this time of year, it's all right.
I love coming down here. Food's good. So food's good, and you've got lovely offices. So yeah.
So we're going to talk sort of about agile transformations, kind of related topics to that. So I've heard the journey at Cornwall Council being referred to as turning the tanker from an agile transformation point of view. I think that's from an Agile on the Beach talk a while ago.
It was.
Where would you say you're at on that journey? How's it gone so far? Can you give us a little bit of flavour as to what that's like?
Yeah, of course. It's gone really well. It's gone. I mean, I've been there nearly 4 years. If I look back and think exactly, if I'd gone in there thinking we would be where we are now, and 4 years ago, any trepidation I had about coming, because I'd relocated my whole family down to Cornwall, totally changed. I was working in financial services, moving to the public sector and doing this job that admittedly, when I looked at it, had a terrifyingly broad scope.
Yeah.
For whatever the job was. I remember talking it through with my wife and thinking, and they said, I got to do all this, stuff, right? And I thought, but that was one of the selling points, was this trusted empowerment, and Steve and my previous boss, Ross, Steve, the CIO, and my previous boss, Ross McKenzie, really kind of trusted me to do that. So pretty cool. So I came and did it. If I'd have thought we'd be where we are, I would be very proud of that and pleased with it. And we've got, multiple, within the IT teams, we've got multiple product teams, so 12 to be fair, more like 15. Some of them don't call themselves product teams, but they behave exactly like a product team does. And a loose Spotify styled scaled agile tiered framework of interconnecting interdependent teams. We're using Spotify tribes. We've got communities of practice. We've got a really successful daily gathering of the tribes. So we call it a daily scrum of scrums. We've had full challenges from some scrum masters who've come in and agile coaches and said it's not a scrum of scrums. I could care less. The point is, it's great. We have a laugh. We go through all of the day's things, and actually that meeting serves as the heart of the hub of the delivery world for IS, and links into the leadership team. So it's great. So within IS, I think quite mature. We've had internal audits that have said how well it's gone, compared us with other sort of private sector bodies and big organisations, and said we were better in some cases, which is really cool. But also now, serious backing through the training that we've rolled out elsewhere. Along with the delivery transformation, we always thought that agile coaching was a key thing to champion. We've got, some seriously capable, seriously capable, charismatic agile coaches delivering courses, and as a result, we've had hundreds of people, 600-700 from the council go on the agile course, including the chief exec, including the section 151 officer, which is brilliant, and then advocating agile as a way of getting things done, of having getting things done, having a nice time while you're doing it, like good value for customers, good value for the people you serve, that kind of thing. So we've got great backing. People, I just think it's gone really well. So I'm enjoying it. I like going to work. I know that lots of people have said how it enables them to enjoy their roles. So it's pretty cool.
Fantastic.
Working with Head Forwards, we've also got partners that work with us in an agile way. And you guys have been a big part of the transformation as well. You've been involved, and we never had to show you knew it. So that was cool. And other partners that we have tried to work with who don't understand agile, it's been a real obstacle. So that's another bit of it. So yeah,
sounds like a really good news story so far. What would you say if you had to mention any challenges that you've had to overcome on the journey? What's the sort of what have you got in that space?
So I've done this before. I've done this in the private sector, financial services, insurance companies, and things like that. Yeah. Very different environment. You've got a lot more money, let's be honest. Public services, public sector, excuse me, you have to be creative, be resourceful, you have to make good use of the resources at your disposal. That doesn't mean there isn't money for things, but you have to justify it you have to justify it very carefully to make sure that there would be a return on the investment for ultimately the people that fund you, and the people that fund us are the people of Cornwall in this instance. And so obviously we have to make sure that what we're doing. So at first that was an obstacle, because when we came in, let's do an experiment, let's test this. Now, some of us were aware that what we were experimenting on was rapidly increasing the speed of delivery, stopping the waste, and actually delivering things very, very quickly for those that needed it. But there was obstacles and challenges around, that ensuring that we weren't flippantly wasting, and we weren't. We were meticulously careful about regularly checking in and justifying that the experiments we were running were working, and that the teams we set up were actually delivering on the sort of the core principles that we needed them to. So that's obstacle. I mean, the other thing, council culture's quite distinct. Now, I don't know, my main experience, 15 years in the private sector, financial services, that is quite a distinct culture, and you move between one insurance company and another, and it doesn't change a great deal. Yeah. You get your bonuses at the end of March, throughout the year, performance management reviews feed into bonuses. People work really hard, they work long hours, they get really, they're well paid for it. The councils, it's not to say that council people work really, really hard, but there's a sense of almost like duty, or a sense of like real people are almost doing it because they love it, like they're really like passionate about being part of the public sector. There's less money for things, that does to some extent kind of it does hold you back, but also the understanding of that means that people will sort of roll their sleeves up and help with things that maybe isn't their job title, which is really helpful undertaking a transformation. So I don't know, the obstacles and challenges, there could be I don't know, sure. No, we could be here for the remainder of the day, into the night, and get gradually, there's been a lot.
Where did you sort of get started with it all? So what was the sort of initial baby steps, in terms of, are you like agile in your adoption of agile in a way, small iterative steps, or was it quite a big bang thing that you landed overnight?
That's a really good question. So no, definitely not big bang. My whole approach to everything, and has always been, and it has been successful at the council, I have to say, is do things in a small space, show they work, show the value. Again, in the council, that's critical, because you show the value, you get buy-in from the people in that small experimental cluster of people who've been working on the thing. Others see that, and they, then your momentum builds, and you actually then get others involved, and you can grow things. So we always do small experiments, often, without agile terminology, we just gather people and do a thing, and we gather teams. So the thing that really helped coming in to the council was that the IS senior leadership team were totally bought into agile, and didn't exactly know how it should work in that environment, and neither did I. I gave them a Gantt chart when I started, and I said, over the time we're going to do all these things, and we go back at it and laugh at it now, because obviously like it was so ambitious, but also one of the things we said was gather the senior leadership team, and let's build a scrum. Let's do a scrum to run the transformation using a scrum. And we got this huge daily stand up and Kanban board, and we wrote the agile principles in massive writing, and we put user stories up, and we put it right by the canteen in the office, and everyone was walking past. We knew that people had to walk past to see it, and kind of that we as a leadership team were not sure how to do this, and we were being kind of vulnerable and going and I was coaching them at first. Then we hired Richard Barton, another extraordinarily experienced agile coach, and he came in. I was so relieved because I had a bit of backing. Turned out that the head of PMO had loads of agile experience, so it started to grow and build some momentum with some other talented people. But before you knew it, twice a week we had daily stand-ups, and people were watching it, and they were watching the progression of the tasks across the board. So then other people went and got boards, and other boards were appearing at the end of pods of desks where the team sat, and you saw they were beginning to start it. So it grew like that. So that's how we kicked it off.
Yeah, nice.
Ended up with a huge... We created one of the panels on the wall was a done bucket. So all the tickets that were completed, everything that we moved through that Kanban board ended up on there, and we never took them off. And after 3 months, you just saw this ticket after ticket after ticket, and we gradually started sizing things and estimating and working through definitions already, and definitions are done. So we sort of learnt Scrum together. Some of us had done it before, but we in public learnt Scrum together, shared it with everyone, showed it to everyone, and then everyone. I don't think we even told everyone they should use Scrum. They just began using Scrum.
Yeah, cool. That's actually similar to a topic that was discussed on the previous podcast, actually, which was sort of picking the bits of Agile that work for you at the moment in time.
Yeah.
So like I mentioned earlier, being Agile in your just sheer adoption of Agile in an organisation allows you to, if you take the bits you need there and then, retrospect, review it, iterate on it, bin stuff off that's not working, tweak it. It sounds like that's kind of what you did in a lot of ways, in terms of, we don't know exactly what it looks like. There's not a set in stone, this is how you do Agile, particularly a local authority.
Yeah.
But we'll go on the journey together and work it out. Yeah,
it's cool. And as I said, that part wasn't really part of the plan. It was something we worked on together with the leadership team, almost getting together, having the conversation and going, hang on a minute, let's just do this. That space is there on the wall, and thinking quickly and taking the opportunity when it arose, which was, but we were very lucky that everyone was bought in. They put their time into it. And on the flip side, I've worked in private sector organisations which probably like to think they were full of really progressive and great people. And some people made themselves a total, utter obstacle to progress, particularly in the leadership teams.
Yeah.
And to the extent that almost you would... I'm absolutely convinced that some of my old colleagues would wait until we went on holiday. And by we, those of us that are working on the Agile transformation, we didn't go on a holiday together, but our calendars were being stalked, because when we were away, these people would pounce on the whole of the rest of the team and start instigating like old style meetings and dragging things back in time. And you come back from leave and you almost be, the joke was, we'd go into our calendars and go, what's been undermined and what's been, and that is bizarre, but I never understood it. And ironically, I think some of those people now I've seen on their LinkedIn's, they've actually changed their job titles to Agile Project Manager and Scrum Master. So it's obviously over time they bought into it over time, but it was a real challenge for them to get on board with it, and huge resistance to change that wasn't really there in a council, and mistakenly I would have thought that would be something that we would have faced.
Yeah, maybe.
And it really, really wasn't. And so that was a really nice surprise.
That's great. So buy-in. So we've got buy-in. We've got which I guess relates to culture a little bit, which is something we were talking about before we started this. You've mentioned obviously like the leadership team within IS. You've mentioned the buy-in from the teams, the product teams within IS. Mm-hmm. What was the buy-in like early on from maybe stakeholders that sat outside of IT, maybe where just software development or development in itself is a bit of an alien concept anyway?
Yeah.
Was there any resistance or any barriers you had to overcome there, or were they bought in as well from the off?
So probably not from the off, probably because they probably wouldn't have been aware this was going on. And in advance of this Agile transformation, I think IT may have been treated a bit more like they weren't an outsourced function, but elements of the way outsourced functions are treated were at play, which is, here's your requirements specification, give us a cost, and we give them a cost, and then they go, right, okay, see you later, go deliver it for us nerds. And we would go away and deliver those things. Agile champions and challenges you as an Agile coach or an Agile transformation person or someone working with delivery teams to say back to those stakeholders, well, hang on a minute, we can't deliver that based on what we've got here, and we won't get you what you want, and it'll be expensive, and it won't be what let's go back to that main point, it won't be what you want, right? So please come and join us. Over time we played that message through, but at the very outset, no, that wasn't really there. So engagement from outside of IT, not really there. Over time, though, and as I said, I drew a big Gantt chart on the wall when I first came in, which everybody laughs at now. But the point being, that was a later phase. It was this build it small, scale it up over time, build networks. There'll be people who become advocates of the agile approach just because they see it working. They'll tell their friends. Grow socially as well as organisationally, and so that was kind of how we were planning to progress. And I think it was probably 8 months or so into the transformation that we began to really engage with heads of service of the various different areas within the council. And the key for us there was that they were challenging estimates that were coming back, cost estimates for work, and we were saying in return, guess what, we can save you hundreds of thousands of pounds. And of course then immediately they're listening, which is great because they said they're engaged at this level of, hang on a minute, the IT people are saying that they can save us loads of money, right, so let's listen. And the conversation was then around, prior to using Agile, Scrum and those delivery techniques and methodologies, estimates for big pieces of work, we did projects, they were big. And I've done this for years as a software developer. You start a project, you be told what you need to deliver, and then some bright spark adds 40% contingency because there's so many unknowns within what you are delivering, and it needs to be there. And usually those projects do come out quite close to the estimates, and there's lots of reasons we don't have time to discuss, but there's lots of reasons why they come out close to the estimates or beyond. But what we began to say to some of our senior stakeholders was, your estimate's 1.5 million. Guess what? We can do this for about 800,000 if you give us a product owner and you trust them, and you come to every 2 weeks, come to a meeting, and we'll tell you how it's going, and we'll tell you how much money we spent. So you're never surprised. You never get a nasty surprise at the end of 10 months that you find loads of money's been spent and you don't know what's been delivered. Every 2 weeks they're in, and they bought into that. So that made a big change. Now that hasn't been rolled out. At the 8 months point, that was not rolled out as a policy everywhere. Again, we tried this with some of the services and we found it very successful. It's one of our talks at Agile on the Beach was actually about that with Jackie Ward, the head of the waste service. And that team with the waste project that we worked on with them, they were absolutely in the detail of what was being delivered, and they knew how much was being spent. It was a fantastic experience, and it did, we were shouting about that because that win hopefully enabled us to almost to sell Agile to senior stakeholders in a language that was a benefit to them, which was your costs will be reduced and you'll have security and certainty of what you're going to get delivered. So
I guess once you've got the momentum going, you can then start to show and prove the value based off of, here's what we delivered over here for this service or for this customer. The buy-in suddenly starts just rolling after that, I guess.
Totally, and it's on the internet as well. So when people come for jobs, we say, check us out. We're on the internet twice. Turning the tanker beyond 90 degrees is up there. And my sons look and they say, my dad's on the... They won't for long, then 10 and 7, but they definitely look at it and they say, my dad's on the internet. And they click on YouTube. Look, that's my dad. Now, the fact they'd never watched the presentation because it's beyond boring if you're 7, but the fact I am on YouTube is good enough for them. So
pretty well, you'll be on YouTube again after this, isn't it?
Yeah, amazing, awesome. I'm on YouTube twice. That must be the best dad in the world.
Well, it sounds like that sounds like a pretty good journey actually. So because you mentioned it was at that 8th month point where that's when you started to engage the sort of more senior stakeholders to show them the value. But that's good because obviously you're empowered from the off to actually get going, start without prying eyes and hang on, what is it? How are you doing it there? We're used to it this way. You were able to build something internally small, and then when it was ready, it was like, hey, look at all this cool stuff we've been doing, and the value's there. We've mentioned a few times key blockers, so I'll ask you a question about this bit. If we don't have a great...
Let me get ready. Key blockers.
Try again, So... key blockers in terms of overcoming effective transformation. We have touched on a couple of things already, and it sounds like you haven't had a ton, because a big part of it, I think, from what I've seen in most places, is like culture, buy-in, that kind of stuff. But in terms of challenging and resetting mindsets, resetting culture, how's that gone? And do you have any,
So challenges. So I thought about loads of these in the car, and there's so many, but actually one that is both a win and a total fail, something that I think I've been really good at and really lucky at. And you know how you can kind of mix the two up and think you're really good when maybe you've just been really lucky, but and also really bad and really unlucky. So I probably have a tendency to think I've been lucky when I do something good, and I've made a bad judgment when I do something unlucky. So but agile coaches, that's the thing. And there's so many people now calling themselves agile coaches, so just proceed with caution, because they are a very diverse bunch, and some can pick your organization up and can take you exactly where you want to go, and they are these intelligent, well-read, human-centered people who flexible thinking and learned, brilliant people. And some of them are dogmatic, rigid think. The irony of that, but dogmatic, rigid thinkers, who are obsessed with implementing Scrum along like it's a rule book, or some of these agile frameworks. It's not a rule book. It's not. It's a guide. It's the Scrum guide, right? Not the Scrum rulebook, right? But for some of them, and so there's dogmatic people, and so we're really careful over time. But this is taken time. So my previous organisation where I was working there, I just remember sitting with the director and the head of transformation, the director of transformation, and the chief exec, and we sat there and just going, how have we failed again? How have we failed again at this? Really uncomfortable meetings, but a shared sense of accountability of like, we've hired people and they are failing. What are we doing wrong? We kind of began to build a bit of a picture of the people that you need, people who will roll their sleeves up, people who do not think they're just going to set strategy and then wander off. So servant leadership among your agile coaches is critically important. Continue with that at the council. Again, we've had some that have failed. People come in and they're not working out. You can fail them fast, and they have an opportunity to move on and go maybe find a better fit. But definitely, so that is the thing more than anything. And I think the traditional answers when you're asked that question are, senior stakeholders who don't want you to progress at the agile transformation and things like that. Haven't come across that. No. To be honest, in any place where I've worked, that's a fairly stock answer, but more that when you go about the agile transformation, be careful who you do it with, because not everyone who's on board will be will be conscious of the people that the agile transformation is taking place with, and lots of agile coaches go and do loads of exams and come back with a ton of qualifications, and it doesn't really mean anything. So one of our things that we, I'm sure I'll probably get, not everyone would agree with that statement, but the qualifications are one thing, passing an exam is one thing, but what we do with our agile coaches at the council, we test them quite carefully when they come in. Can they walk into a room full of people who need to drive an outcome, with absolutely no prep other than their own sort of competency and their own knowledge of the things that they need to do to drive good outcomes, and go and actually an hour later walk out of that room and the people are sat there thinking, wow, that was amazing, that person was brilliant. That's a good test. We test them in the field, and I think that would be very important for any sort of transformation, really. Get those coaches right, and that is your key to success.
You mentioned it a little while ago, actually, which was the sort of training that you've put on across the organisation as well, which I guess it comes with the finding the right coaches. I think from what I've seen in terms of some of the work I've seen at the council is that that's been massively successful. You said hundreds of people have been on these the agile training. I know you're now starting to roll out product ownership, product management training as well.
Yep, that's right.
How would you agree that that's like a big part of getting that wider organisational, not just buy-in, but understanding of when you come to work with us, on a project, this is what agile is if you've not seen it before, and this is how we run a team and how we deliver a project.
So yes, fully. We do courses for the council people, and as I said, it's about 800 or so have done it. We do the NHS, so we're helping NHS IT teams in Cornwall, which was awesome, because that for us feels really good. We also do we've done one or two Agile for Cornwall, just for members of the public. So anyone who wants to learn Agile, we hire a room in a local venue, They can turn up, they get a day's course. These courses are like £1,000 a day if you want to go on a course.
Yeah.
So no one's going to pay for that. But they're free. They get tea and coffee provided. They come, they get involved, and people have left those. Say, I'd have paid you this much money, and the joke is they always say way less than the course should actually cost. So it's like nobody knows how much corporate courses actually cost. But to an organisation to send 800 people on that course, it's just astonishingly expensive. We've been lucky because, lucky, and we've maybe we made good decisions when we brought people in, but so Phil Marshall, who runs the Agile training courses, lots of this is his work. So part of the success of this transformation has been Phil's fantastic, talented delivery of the Agile course, and I love it. I've been on it loads of times, and I learn something new each time I go. But yeah, that builds momentum because people take things away from that, and all of a sudden the terminology. We try and use as little terminology as possible all the time anyway, but there's still elements of it that, Scrum is a word. People know what it means. It's no longer a threatening thing. They see actually it's quite easy. You could do this. You could plan your holiday using this technique, and they now can do that once they've been on that course. So yeah, it's been brilliant. So yeah, the team, the wider team that we built over time are taking this forward now as a big group, but that's one of the real success factors, I think.
Yeah. Right.
So.
I think I agree with that totally. You've mentioned quite a lot actually around the leadership team. So if we just go back a little bit in terms of how you got going, the leadership team within IS, is there any one thing that you would say is critical from leadership, from tech leadership to enable successful transformation?
Yeah, there is. And it's something that I've learned over time, and I definitely didn't do this when I started out on my journey. Is when I took on my first team, because I as I said, I came back from software design and software programming background. You first take on your first team, you get into the detail, and you sort of you maybe check what they do, and you think you have the same expertise. As I've progressed throughout my career, the importance of servant leadership has become more and more apparent, and I've seen it in people that I aspire to be like and that I look up to, and I see that skill of stepping back, allowing your team to, trusting your team, giving them the space to use their expertise to do their role. And when you see an obstacle, and I'm looking around for an imaginary obstacle to push it away, but your role is to step into your leadership layer and remove those obstacles, create a space for your team or for your teams of teams or your department, whatever that may be. Keep them focused on the thing that is their area of expertise, and that is for me, agile leadership, technical leadership, all of those things. That is the key to doing it well. And when you make decisions, judging on, hang on, would a good servant leader do this, or am I doing the right thing? And then realizing, well, actually, do you know what? I got a bit uncomfortable, and I got a bit stressed about what was going to happen, and I was about to do something that doesn't follow those principles, and then you go back. What should I, how should I approach this as a good servant leader? And people, in my experience, people, if you empower them in the right way, they grow exponentially in what they will do, and what you don't even have to ask them to do stuff in lots of times anymore. And I suppose the opposite of that is give someone an instruction in the command tone, wander off, come back 2 months later and then wonder why it wasn't done, which is effectively giving you instructions like a waterfall project, which is, stakeholder gives the requirements, wanders off, comes back, goes, this isn't what I wanted. It's like, well, yeah, guess what? You didn't. So servant leaders stay involved as well. So servant leadership and staying involved in, to some extent, and there's many different ways you can have touch points with your teams, but staying involved with what's being delivered on a regular basis, keeping in for that, whatever the cadence is, but being involved in, it's not checking up on them, it's checking in with them to make sure, exactly. What can I do to help you? What can I, have you got any blockers? That almost should be the question that leaders should be asking their teams. What can I unblock on your behalf in my layer to enable you to carry on doing the things I asked you to do in the first place?
Yeah, exactly. It's again, and that's kind of a mindset culture switch in itself, isn't it? In terms of, rather than checking up on you and instructing you and directing you, and it's like you say, how can I help you? That's one of the biggest roles a leader can play, isn't it?
It feels good to say it. Exactly. It feels like you're a really nice dude. Like you can go along and just say but people appreciate it. And there's lots of times where someone's stuck in there's a go live going on, and they'll be stuck doing something like that. And I remember a boss of mine, like, going out buying coffees and pizzas and stuff like that, and he was the most senior person in the room, and he did know what he was incredibly capable, but just recognizing that actually all that other stuff wasn't important anymore, and he went and did that, and he came back, and then everyone was like relieved and eating and things like that. And but that was a really good example. It's a very physical example, but of doing that thing, of recognizing that the team needed that support more than anything, and doing that.
Yeah. Okay, so another thing that has seen crop up and I've heard people starting to talk about is this concept of organizational debt. So maybe in an agile transformation, that's where you might have process or parts of your organization that still have a bit of a hangover to pre-agile transformation. Have you seen that? Have you got any examples of the sort of processes or things that maybe weren't right to change on day one, but that maybe now you're treating as org debt, that are the next things you're trying to overcome?
So I think some of the old cultural habits, the cultural habits of the place become organisational debt in a way. But we talked a bit about that. To find a specific example, I think some of the release management processes that we have in place, almost before almost to develop the explanation about that, they're there for the right reasons, and they're run meticulously for exactly the right reasons, which is protecting the integrity of the production environments, right, and making sure our data isn't lost. That in itself is really, really good. But they are, it is slower than continuous deployment, continuous integration, continuous delivery. You can't just deploy immediately overnight to fix something. There is stages which get, there are waiting periods where you wait and you get held up in gates, right? We're looking at DevOps practices, and specifically the DevOps code pipeline, allowing us to accelerate that. Now, what it doesn't mean is bypass that, and it doesn't mean not having the rigor that existing process has, but it's something that can do it like this. It can, so instead of a person going through visual checks of some things, some of those elements can be scripted, and they can become part of the code deployment pipeline. And so if the criteria that the old release process or the existing release process looks at and checks carefully, if those criteria are not met, the code is not deployed. It immediately pauses. It's not committed, and you're not able to go to live. Cybersecurity checks can be, to some extent, done in that way. In the same way, creating the actual change requests and that change management processing can be done via by elements of the DevOps pipeline. So we're looking at that now. Again, I'm not really saying organizational debt. It sounds bad. It sounds like there's an obstacle people and an obstacle process, and I don't really mean it like that, because, as I said, it's there for the right reasons. But as part of digital transformation, moving things into a space where they can happen really quickly, and also with 100% guarantee that they are repeated in repeated test cases, automating test processing and things like that. That the test coverage is there. It will be run, and if it does not, if it doesn't run correctly, you'll get it will fail, and your code will not be deployed, rather than occasional errors in manual testing or so it removes that element of human error. It allows you to move fast to the production environments for certain kind of changes, and so that would be something that it's an existing thing. It's an older way of doing things. Over time, I think we would progress to to that being part of the build pipeline, and the scripting of more things, and then that calls in even more things. What can be scripted? What can be built into the build pipeline for all of these different areas and elements of the organisation? And that's quite fascinating. So, and there's lots of Agile on the Beach about those kind of topics. I've done lots of reading about that. It's quite interesting, and some people are so much further along than us. But when you have to unlearn one thing and start a new one, it's much harder than if you go into a greenfield if you just start from scratch. You would build a code deployment pipeline in DevOps. You just would. You wouldn't need to. You wouldn't think about it for 2 seconds. But when there's an existing one, it is rigorous and it does work. So the systems are protected. So we're not removing a bad thing. It's just that we can still progress. I think
that's the next thing on the roadmap in a way, isn't it? It's like in the same sense that technical debt isn't necessarily something to fear as part of development, particularly in agile development. You just accept the fact that you're going to have tech debt, and it's then measuring up the when and where to fix those issues.
Yeah.
It's probably the same thing in organisational debt. It's something that it's not a bad thing, like you said a minute ago. It's not something that you should fear, or that inherently means that we've got something wrong. It just means we haven't got to that part of the roadmap yet, in a way, in terms of our whole transformation.
Yeah.
If we're trying not to do this in a big bang sense, we're trying to roll it out in an agile way, like we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Then you're going to get to different bits of that at different times, and so you've got a bit of org debt. That's fine. It's just okay. Now we're at that point where these are the things. This is next up on our roadmap. This is the thing we're going to try to change, or to add more tooling to, or automate more. In the same way, like you said, if you were a new greenfield startup, you might engineer it that way now. I'm sure in 20 years' time there'll be something new or something different that company now has org debt to try and to change. And I think, again, not something necessarily fear.
Yeah, no, definitely, and unavoidable.
Yeah, unavoidable.
To be honest,
Exactly.
even that greenfield site, the lovely we're describing. 6 months down the line, let's face it, if you're moving fast, you're going to create technical debt as you go.
Yeah.
There are practices to mitigate it and to manage it, make it as minimise it as much as possible. But I would think that it would be very difficult to work in an environment where there was none. I doubt few people do. So.
Exactly, yeah. And again, as long as you've got the buy-in and you've got the culture right, so that when you come to tackle these things, it's not an attack on an individual or a way of doing things,
for sure.
or just because that's how it's been. It's not saying that was wrong, that was right for the time. What we're doing now, we'll work together, and we'll get to change it, essentially.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. This is the last question. Usually calls for me to basically give a gift of some sort, food or drink of choice. So I know you like your beer.
I like the occasional beer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So this
lovely.
is I think last year's Head Forwards ale, named Mob Ale.
Awesome. Thank you.
I also got a bottle opener, which is also Head Forwards branded, because everything has to be branded. The beer and the bottle opener. So there you go.
Thank you very much.
I've got one as well. And then just for the last question, I usually ask about, and the guests kind of any reading or podcasts and that kind of thing that they read recently or listened to recently. But I know you went to Agile on the Beach very recently.
I did.
And just wanted to get your thoughts on any particularly interesting talks or any highlights for you from Agile on the Beach.
That's a difficult question. So to be clear, I think it was the best one I've been to. It's fantastic, and they're getting better and better all the time. It's one of the ones I haven't spoken in, so obviously it had a major disadvantage that I wasn't telling anyone my story. But there was it was really, really good. How can I pick ones? I'm just trying to think. Ones I really enjoyed. There was one about imposter syndrome. And I know I ended up in there with a whole load of my colleagues and saw them all in there. I thought, oh no, you guys too, you've all got it. And because I definitely suffer from it, and I saw that, and I thought, fantastically delivered, so enjoyable, uncomfortable at times.
Yeah.
But there's that sort of stuff. There's that kind of talk alongside really complex talk about steps towards continuous integration and 6 steps that help you achieve your goals. So that was well worth a watch from a senior developer, and it was really good. But the way that they split it off into different tracks, and there was the product management track, and there was agility and organizational agility, and they were really good. And you realized that all the product managers didn't just go to one of them; they were all over the place. It's great. So yeah, I would love to go every year from now on. I think it's brilliant, and it's a bit like it's multiple training courses. It's quite overwhelming because there's a lot of knowledge, and you get the opportunity to rewatch them online, but it's like the ultimate training course, because you get to see all of this diverse thinking, and I haven't, it's all really good. So there you go.
Brilliant. No, thanks very much.
And excellent food, excellent location, all good. So yeah, really enjoyed it. So.
Good stuff. Well, thanks, Mike. Thanks very much for coming on today. I think we've had a really good, engaging conversation. Cheers.
Thank you very much for having me and for listening.
No problem at all. Thanks very much. Cheers.